Hi, my name is Dr. Joyce Alberts, clinical psychologist working in private practice based in North Canterbury, New Zealand. I've been posting a series of videos related to my concerns around the harm caused by the leadership in the Gloriavale Christian community. I posted a video earlier which outlined the convictions of a number of men who have been involved in leadership roles within the community. This is a follow-up to that video with some updates. And at the time of recording this video, I'm aware that there are potentially more convictions that may be laid with further police investigations underway. I'm just going to recap on the names of the men that have been published in multiple news articles. These are freely available. I'm not breaching any confidentiality by providing these names. I myself have uncovered approximately 20 names, and I understand other organisations or groups suggest that they are far in excess of 20 men that have undergone police investigations, child protection investigations, or faced criminal convictions in the New Zealand courts, predominantly in the Christchurch District Court, the Greymouth District Court, and in some cases, the Timaru District Court. As a quick reminder, the Gloriavale Christian Communities started or had its foundations here in North Canterbury, close to where I live, and I've outlined that beginning in my first video. They have since moved to Lake Huperi, which is on the west coast of the South Island, and they remain living in a very isolated area with an estimated number of children and adults from 550 to 600 plus. So let's just run through these names before I give you the update. So the first name and the first conviction occurred in 1994, 1995, and that was related to the founding leader, Neville Cooper, who changed his name to Hopeful Christian. He was convicted of multiple counts of specific harm to children, females, boys, and women. The second name I have was a conviction in May of 2018. In fact, that's when he was sentenced, and that was to a gentleman, Clem Reddy, who was part of the leadership at that time. And Clem Reddy was convicted of causing physical harm to a child. The third name I have on my list is Just Standfast, who was a teacher at that time. And I had the first conviction and sentencing occurred in 2019. He was allowed to return to live within the Gloriavale community after he had been convicted of multiple charges of specific harm to children, girls aged 7 to 14. He had 10 charges of specific harm to girls under the age of 12 and 6 charges of specific harm against girls aged between 12 and 16. 21 victims of Just Stand Fast were noted in the court documents leading up to his 2019 conviction. As I said, he was allowed to return to the community, where he continued to offend and faced a further 23 charges of specific harm against 15 girls, violent offending against 5 boys and 1 adult between 1983 to 2023, and he was sentenced the second time in August of 2024. I have two various dates for Howard Temple. So after Neville Cooper passed away in 2018, Howard Temple took over as overseeing shepherd. And there was one article that suggested he had been sentenced to 6 months home detention in August of 2019. I have some questions around that. I'm not 100% certain, but that was a news article and you may find that yourself. However, more lately, he was facing charges in 2025 for further specific harm to girls and women in the community. He faced charges of specific indecent acts against 10 girls across more than 20 years. Initially had name suppression, initially pled not guilty. However, during the court hearing before a jury in 2025, he pled guilty, changed his plea, and he was initially sentenced to 26 months in prison, which was reduced to a community sentence on appeal. In early 2026, he stood down from his leadership role. Number 5 on my list is Vigilant Standrew, who is also a leader or a servant, is the title there. He was sentenced in January of 2022 and initially denied charges of physically assaulting 14 boys, but later pled guilty to charges of physical assault of boys aged 10 and 11 occurring between 2017 and 2020. And when I give you the update, you'll see that there are some other dates related to the same charges. Number 6 on my list is Timothy Disciple. He was a father of 10 at the time, and he was sentenced in November 2022. He received 2 years, 6 months, and that was reduced to 21 months on appeal. Number 7 is Joseph Hope, who was also in a position of authority within the community, and he was sentenced in October 2022 to 2 years and 9 months in prison as a result of multiple convictions of specific harm against a girl under the age of 12. And we have John Reddy, number 8 is John Reddy, and he was sentenced in June of 2023 for using a metal implement to discipline and discourage disobedience to a group of boys that he was supervising on their work duties within the community. Number 9 is Peter Trust. He was sentenced in August of 2023, and this man, I'm not going to call him a gentleman because there's nothing gentle about Peter Trust. He forced a girl to strip naked, remove all of her clothes, in order that he could photograph her for educational purposes. So yes, in a position of authority as a so-called teacher within the community. He was also sentenced for using implements and full force harm on girls using pipes and wooden spoons. Number 10 is Jonathan Benjamin, and he was sentenced in March of 2024, again for multiple charges of specific harm, and with the youngest of his victims being only 5 or 6 years old at the time of his offending. Number 11 is Faithful Pilgrim. Now, Faithful Pilgrim, he was disciplined by the New Zealand Teachers Council in May of 2022, and that was related to Just Stand Fast's offending. So Faithful Pilgrim at the time was the principal of the Christian school within the community, and he was disciplined by the New Zealand Teachers Council for failing to notify the council of Just Stand Fast offending, and that he'd also promoted him as someone of good character in order that Stand Fast would retain his practicing certificate, which enabled him to continue offending. So remember, Just Stand Fast as teacher, his offending occurred, he was first sentenced in 2019, and then around 5 years later in 2024, due to the fact that Faithful Pilgrim had supported him in retaining his teaching, practicing certificate, and having access to more victims. In May of 2024, a young person was given name suppression, and that the judge at that time noted that while this young person had been found guilty of his specific harm to others, he himself had also been a victim as a child, and that it was noted within that particular case that this offending in Gloriavale crosses generations. It is intergenerational, with often the victims later becoming perpetrators due to the normalisation of this type of offending. Number 13 is really stand true. He faced 2 charges of indecent assault and one of specific harm. These occurred between 2008. Allegedly, he was found guilty of it, so not allegedly, after he saw a woman without clothing on as she exited the shower. And this because the showers and bathrooms and dressing rooms are communal within the Gloriavale community, and adult males do have access to those areas, while children, young girls and women are attempting to shower or change or toilet. Number 14 on my list is Salem Temple. He was a servant up until 2021 when he resigned. He faced 2 jury trials for specific harm to women. However, the jury in both trials were not able to come to a unanimous decision, and then the charges were dropped and a 3rd trial did not go ahead. We have another person, number 15 on my list, is another person again with multiple charges. Name suppression in this case appears to be related to protecting the victims. 4 charges of indecent assault on a female aged between 12 and 16, 2 charges against a boy aged between 12 and 16, 1 of unlawful specific connection with a female aged 12 and 16, and 4 of indecent SA of a female aged under 12. Number 16 on my list is Aaron Courage, and he was sentenced in April 2023, and that was for using a weapon, effectively, electrical cord, to whip his daughter. He was convicted of that assault but discharged without further penalty. Number 17 is Fervent Ben Cannon. Just wanting to point out that Fervent Ben Cannon is the son-in-law of Howard Temple. So Howard Temple convicted for the same charges that Fervent Ben Cannon was. Fervent Ben Cannon also initially pled not guilty, but then later changed his plea. He first appeared in court in April of 2021. He was given name suppression until September 2024, and then he was sentenced, I understand it, to 2 years in prison, Rolleston prison, in September 2024, so likely to have been released at this stage. So I went back and did another search through various news sites. The first one I've got is a news article dated 26 September 2017. You can find this on the Christchurch Press website stuff. And in this news article, it states, and I'm quoting, documents obtained from Charity Services, which is part of New Zealand Internal Affairs, revealed allegations of forced marriage, physical and SA, and enforced control of personal matters such as the leadership, it's not a quote here, I'm breaking the quote, but the leadership holding individual members' passports and maintaining control of individual members' bank accounts. So that was 2017. Then I've got a news article, again, the Stuff website, this is 2nd of July 2020, and this related to a family court case in which family court judge Sarah Lindsay placed the children in the mother's care. The mother of 4 children at the time aged 15, 12, 7 and 5 was living in Australia. After the breakup of the relationship between the mother and the father, the father, against the mother's wishes, took the older three girls to live in the Gloriavale community on the west coast of the South Island. The mother sought to have the children returned to her care and took this to the New Zealand Family Court. The youngest child had remained living with the mother, so the father may be deciding that he just couldn't care for that infant, so he left her with the mother. The father had told the family court that he had to take the girls to Gloriavale. They had to remain living in Gloriavale because their very souls would be at risk. Their very salvation would be at risk if they left Gloriavale. The mother only found out that her daughters had been taken by the father to live in Gloriavale when she was contacted by a lawyer or through a lawyer in March of 2018. So my understanding is in 2016, he removed the three older girls from Australia, and it took approximately 2 years before the mother found out where they were living. And it was in July of 2020 when the family court placed the children in mother's primary care in Australia. The next article I've got relates to a major Gloriavale investigation. The source of this article is the press website The Stuff, and this was printed on the 2nd of December 2023. This article outlines an investigation in June of 2020. So remember that these things are important because these are prior to the Royal Commission of Inquiry in 2022. So in June of 2020, the police initiated an investigation named Operation Minneapolis. I've heard of this operation. It's been referenced multiple times, and it is also referenced in the Royal Commission of Inquiry. And this operation was initiated after the disclosure of an 11-year-old of specific harm after the 11-year-old and family had left Gloriavale. So again, in other videos I've talked about this. These individuals did not have a voice. There was no way they were allowed to disclose the harm within Gloriavale. And if they did, that victim would have been forced or required to have forgiven the perpetrator. Back to Operation Minneapolis. This article says it ran for 5 months and involved Oranga Tamariki social workers, which is New Zealand's Care and Protection Service. They interviewed numerous children and young people within Gloriavale. As they interviewed this 11-year-old child, the 11-year-old had disclosed that there were multiple victims. The investigation found 60 people, including children, 60 people had been involved in harmful SA behaviour as either children, young people, or adults. 60. A police and child protection investigation running for 5 months found 60 people, including children and young people. Again, perpetuating cycle of specific harm as this became normalised within the culture of Gloriavale. The news item noted that in more than one instance, the SA was intergenerational. In April of 2021, so almost a year later, another investigation was launched by the police in Oranga Tamariki named Operation Matthias. Again, after disclosures of specific harm were made, in this case to professionals, and professionals in the article was put in quotes, working within Gloriavale. So it's not clear who those professionals were. The news article, December 2023, notes that the offending dated back to the early 1980s. This next news article I have, the source is the Timaru Herald, and the article was on the Stuff website. It was printed on the 1st of May 2024 and relates to a young man who was spared conviction of SA against children, as at the time he was aged 14 to 15 years old. And again, relating to the flawed upbringing of young people. So again, highlighting the harm that this group, under the leadership, causes to children, young people, and adults due to their teachings, policies, directives, rules, use whatever names you want. Okay, so I came across another name. Actually, I've got two other names related to this. So this will be number 18, and this is Moses Benjamin. The source of this information is the press website, and it was an article published 12th of December 2024. In this case, Moses Benjamin was convicted of causing injury with reckless disregard. Moses Benjamin, again, in a position of authority and leadership within Gloriavale, he was supervising groups of boys aged between 12 and 13 who were required to work on the dairy farms within the Gloriavale community. Remember, there's multiple dairy farms. So according to the news article, one of the boys, and it says teasing, but I'm going to say bullying, because others have told me that bullying is right. So I think the word teasing minimizes what was going on. So one of the boys working on the dairy farm began, my word, bullying another boy. After being told to stop by Moses Benjamin, the boy continued to, my word, bully the other young person. Moses Benjamin became angry, and he picked up a wooden implement called a grubber, and he threw it at the victim, hitting and striking the victim on the head, causing the boy to lose consciousness. This boy experienced significant hearing loss and tinnitus as a result of the traumatic brain injury he received from being hit in the head with this implement. And the judge noted that in the victim impact statement, the victim described experiencing physical, emotional, mental, and social impacts as a result of Moses Benjamin's assault. Number 20 now on my list is Maranatha Steadfast. This is an interesting one. Came across this one and I was like, oh, I hadn't heard about that one before. The source of this, again, is the press website, and the news article was published 31st of January 2025. So Maranatha Steadfast was sentenced to 150 hours of community work for masterminding a $200,000 fraud. This related to one of the Gloriavale companies, and Maranatha Steadfast and another person who was implicated, producing forged documents to enable them to export honey. They also implicated another Gloriavale man, so that's Maranatha Steadfast, and another person who I understand was not part of Gloriavale, but was connected to the company in some way. And I don't think he was part of Gloriavale because he had a different name. But this other man, they implicated him, and he was described in the article as the fall guy, Christopher Courage, in manufacturing or photoshopping export documents to allow them to illegally export this honey. The news article again refers to young people, boys in this case, being overworked. Steadfast was found, as part of his conviction, to have used boys to work 50 hours without sleep. They would get 4-hour breaks, and they were doing this over 2 or 3 days as they were required to fill 200,000 jars with honey. So again, the leadership in Gloriavale using child labour for profit. Then I came across a news article, and this was on TV1 News or One News website. And this article was from the 5th of May, 2026. And this relates to Vigilant Stand True. So you may remember I referred to Vigilant Stand True earlier. Just going to get to the right information there. Where it said in my original information, it said that his offending occurred between 2017 and 2020. However, this 2026 article on the One News website said that it references offending that predates that 2017 offences. In the Christchurch District Court, Vigilant Stand True was convicted of 7 charges of assault with a weapon involving 4 boys while he was supervising the work at the Gloriavale Moss Shed between 2001 and 2013. He was sentenced to 10 months home detention for multiple assaults using weapons. So that was on the 5th of May, 2026 on the One News website. And that indicated to me that this was additional charges and an additional sentence to the one I referenced earlier. So that would indicate that if I read that correctly, that Vigilant Stand True, who was sentenced in January 2022 to 12 months supervision, was given a further conviction and sentenced to 10 months. Again, for using multiple assaults using weapons. Second source related to Vigilant Stand True comes from the Otago Daily Times, or ODT, website, and it was published on the 6th of May, 2026. It relates to the same offending and states, while some acts of violence were related to a single event, so one victim, one event, others related to multiple incidents of Stand True using weapons to cause bruising to boys under his care. Again, remaining in a leadership role, continuing to offend. One victim stated, "I find it hard to trust people now. It scares me as to how I was treated." Another victim, "I often think of those times of abuse. My childhood was full of nightmares." And the article continues, and I quote, "Stand True was the latest of more than 20 Gloriavale adults to be sentenced in court, with several more investigations ongoing." The Otago Daily Times published 6th of May 2026. So we now are over 20 names of Gloriavale men who have been sentenced in the New Zealand courts, predominantly the Christchurch District Court, Greymouth District Court, Timaru District Court, for violence and specific harm against children, boys and girls, young people, and women within this community. So I thought I'd provide that as an update and a follow-on to the previous video, and I will link the 2 videos together in the description should you want to review them one after the other. I hope you found that informative. My intention again is to continue to cry out, to speak out, to raise awareness, to put pressure on authority, to hopefully drum up additional public pressure that this group has been known to New Zealand government, New Zealand ministries, acting under the New Zealand government, police and other organisations such as Child Protection Services, to have engaged in harm from its very beginning in the 70s and 80s up until today. And I ask the question, when is enough enough? When is it, New Zealand, that we stand up and say, we do not allow and stand by children, young people, and adults to be harmed in such a way? To the leadership of Gloriavale, again, I say, shame on you.